Welcome back to our podcast, AI Searched. I'm so excited to have Božo Vukojević here with me today to talk about sports, AI, and peripheral vision. The project, Mechanisms of Peripheral Vision in Complex Decision-Making, entails the real-world simulations and direct investigation of peripheral perception in real-life situations, without restricting natural action responses. The virtual reality aspect is explored on the football pitch with the Club Young Boys Bern, and the real-life segment is done in cooperation with the Swiss Council for Accident Prevention, BFU, and the Swedish National Road and Transport Research Institute, VTI, to investigate why drivers sometimes fail to perceive other road users, especially cyclists. We met at the Push UX conference in Munich, and here we are today in Bern, Switzerland, at his university. And I would just love to hear about your doctorate studies and what you're doing out here in Bern, because it's just so fascinating.
Thank you, Tanya, for inviting me to your podcast. The PhD project that I started here at the University of Bern at the Institute for Sport Science, which began 4 months ago, is dwelling into the questions of the peripheral vision and more precisely into the mechanisms of peripheral vision and how do these mechanisms affect decision making. More precisely, the decision making is in the context of sports, in the football or soccer, as some people would say, and the second context is in the driving. So the project itself is financed through the Swiss National Scientific Foundation for the next 4 years, where we will delve into these fascinating questions, both in the context of virtual reality and in the real reality.
Yes, yeah. How do you see that virtual reality is helping you progress your studies? And what challenges do you face? I mean, of course, Switzerland is so ahead in technology, and you have such a beautiful university and so many options here for your studies. But what challenges do you have to build a lot of the tech on your own in the university with your colleagues, or is a lot of it able to be purchased now in 2024?
So when it comes to the scientific pursuit of any question, one of the most important things is to which extent are you able to manipulate the variables in order to answer the questions on this fundamental basic level. In this context, VR is very helpful because we are able to reproduce scenes over hundreds of times, where we manipulate specifically these variables that we want to manipulate, which later on helps us in the scientific analysis to say, okay, this is in regards to this effect, while this variable does or does not contribute to the effect. When it comes to the equipment and to regards to which we can have access, I have to say we are very fortunate enough that we have a very talented and skilled team of people who are able to create a lot of this equipment by hand. And certainly there is a lot of initiative and free will and motivation to do that.
Incredible.
When it comes to the other things, of course, there is purchase of certain elements which are to a certain extent easier to buy than to make from scratch. But most of the equipment is done from scratch.
Cool.
Just because it allows to have certain controls which are not just on the hardware level but also on the software, where we can actually know what's happening behind the code and what goes in and what comes out.
Very cool. How do you see that gap, because you used to work in UX research, right? So a lot of research every day and psychology, and that's kind of what you're coming from. How is that combining with, the mathematics part of this doctorate research? How do you incorporate those different values of your life and kind of combine them all together?
Yes, well, as someone who comes from a psychological background, I see psychology everywhere. And everything is just context where psychology is applied. everything is user experience, right?
Yes.
And when it comes to doing the scientific experiments, it is an important variable. For example, if you create an experiment in VR setting, it is important to which extent does the participant conceive the whole setting as realistic.
Okay.
For example, if you manipulate the physics of the ball, how it's done, for example, in tennis, the participant might not see it as realistic, and in that regard might not give 100% of the effort which might be in the real life. Or that is, it might create certain confounding variables which are in the root of user experience, right? When it comes to the sports, I mean, sports is such a wide industry.
Yes.
And if we talk about from the perspective of an athlete, if we talk about the perspective from the coach and the scouting industry, or from the perspective of a fan engagement, in all these areas you can have a lot of psychology involved. And now in 2024, it's not hard to imagine to which extent the AI has been incorporated in the sports world. And I think it's going to get deeper and deeper. In some fields, much more, while in some fields, sports is going to remain sports as traditional, where you have team against team and so on, and contact sports and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I work a lot with the media industry, so I see that esports are getting extremely popular, and I think there's a huge element of AI that has to go into esports in order to make it, active and realistic, and to progress at the pace that it needs to progress to be sellable. What do you expect to see in like the next 10 years with your studies, with your research that you're doing in your team, but also just in the industry of where football or soccer is going to go in the next 10 years, and how we're going to be able to improve both players on the terrain and on, the screen for esports?
So in the context of this PhD study, we have done already cooperation with MIT and NVIDIA, which is supposed to be held next year.
Cool.
And the year after that, where we will cooperate with the Swedish Institute for Transport Technology. We expect that there will be dissemination of the knowledge that we gain here through the 6 experiments that we are about to do in this project. When it comes to the context of 5 to 10 years, if we look at the rate at which we accelerated our growth and knowledge, not just in AI and computer science, but also vision science and generally gaming, I would expect that there will be a lot done on the frontier on fan engagement, player performance, and generally improving the whole user experience from all these fields. What I can imagine is that after 10 years, when we look back at 2024, we will certainly say, yeah, we came a long way from what we had. Of course, a lot comes back to the hardware development that will happen. But with the accelerated growth, I'm not afraid that we'll have wonders in 10 years in sports industry, definitely.
Of course, yeah. There's just so much available here, so much technology available here today that we didn't have 10 years ago that can definitely kind of projectile the growth so it's faster. How do you see AI in this? I mean, do you use AI on a daily basis at your university studies, or is it something that your actually researchers contributing to virtual reality and improving that system, so eventually AI is going to maybe even not necessarily take over, but be able to create that virtual reality on its own, create that tennis court, create the football stadium?
Yeah, I would, so generally speaking, as sports is so wide, I can see AI in so many areas. For example, from officiating matches, which is already done. I mean, in the last 20 years, you have Hawkeye Innovations, where they simply push the industry so far that, for example, for 2022, FIFA had announced the semi-automated offside technology, where they have the whole visualization and drawing lines, which in sports, it's a very big thing, officiating. You don't want to make a wrong decision as a referee, but then when you take, for example, from the 1986 Argentina versus England, the hand of God famous goal from Maradona, it would never happen now. And to a certain extent, perhaps there are some things which are or were happening in the last 5 years, which would be no way that they will happen
today
or in 10 years. When you look at the, let's say, amateur level, so not the Premier League or any other high-end league, there are already startups which are doing this. So, for example, in tennis, you have, I believe, Swing Vision from the United States, where for an amateur or recreational athlete, it is possible to utilize this technology and simply to have the whole analysis, both from the statistics and have a line technology that says you, hey, it was in or out, and you can have a smartwatch where it says, yeah, it was in. So to wrap up with this part of the question, I think in officiating matches and generally making these decisions, there will be a lot, much more present in the 10 years than it is now.
And data analytics, I think, get in here too, you know,
For sure.
the percent of that it's out of line or if it's completely out and everything, it's going to be able to maybe eventually improve the player.
Definitely. I mean, in sports, basically all roads lead back to the player performance. And it is one of the holy grails in any sport when it comes to the elite level, where football clubs or any clubs, they try to push at least 1 or 2% improvement, which accumulates over a period of time.
And that's so incredible. So instead of the reverse, instead of you using AI tools, actually your team and your colleagues are building out tools that might progress, you know, machine learning and AI in the future in this kind of sports space. So I'm very excited to follow what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years and see both in the, you know, traffic industry, you know, safety on the road, as well as in the sports industry, which I think obviously has very high budgets that, you know, you can do incredible work with that.
Thank you. I'm excited too, and I believe a lot of things are on a good path to realize this progress. In general, I would say that as sports industry is so wide, and a lot of money is being generated in sports. I've read somewhere a couple of days ago that by 2030 it is expected that AI industry in sports could reach somewhere around about $19 billion. And that is a lot, to say the least. That is a lot. And I mean, from the context of sports journalism, where it's possible to have automated sports journalism, to implementing this technology in live score industry. For example, we have in Croatia SofaScore, a company which has a great team of AI and data scientists, which are utilizing this technology to this day. And they are certainly making a lot of progress in for example, live score industry on numerous fronts. So I am positive that in 10 years we'll have a lot of new things coming.
Yes, very exciting. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was such a pleasure to talk to you, and such a beautiful tour of the lab and the whole campus. So I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
You can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube under AI Searched. Let us know in the comments what you think about this episode, and we're looking forward to bringing you more. Thank you.